Wow, what a pleasure to be here. I will say that it's always nerve-wracking to be on the last day of a union convention, because I know what goes on. And it's a great pleasure to be here in Manitoba. I see my dear colleagues, Dan, Terry, Ben, and Kevin here. They, too, are friends of the labor movement, friends of the operating engineers, and friends generally of jobs in Western Canada. They've done more for jobs in Western Canada than anyone I can imagine, and I just want you to take a moment to recognize these Liberal members of Parliament for Manitoba who fight every day for your jobs. So. There are few better places in this country to hold a union conference than a town steeped in labor history like Winnipeg. And I have to admit to you, since I become the labor minister, like the beginning of July, I was the House leader, and they said, oh, you know what, not much going on in the summer. And then the Prime Minister called and said, well, I'd like you to be the Minister of Labor. I said, oh, well, that sounds like a fun job. Guess what? A lot of whirlwind. And since in over a month, we've obviously tackled a lot of big files. And this is not how I imagined my first speech following what occurred a couple days ago in the railway disputes. What happened in those disputes was not the outcome any of us hoped for, and certainly not the outcome that our federal mediators, who are the best in the business, had worked so hard for. Now, I may not have been in this role very long, but my belief in collective bargaining is as firm as that of my predecessors and that of the man I am here to introduce to you today. Negotiated agreements are always the best way forward. Absolutely. But friends, we found ourselves in exceptional circumstances. We made what I believe was the right decision in the best interests of millions of unionized workers in this country, and small business owners and industries that drive our economy. Jobs, I was getting calls from across the country, people running jobs across this country saying they were a day or two from running out of supplies. Potash mines. Here in Western Canada, we got a higher than average, probably a bumper crop on the prairies. Farmers needing to move their product. We had to make a decision, and of course, a difficult decision. As I've told people so many times since last week, we've got to find some long-term solutions here. Long-term solutions that strengthen the railway sector and its labor relations for years to come. And that's my commitment to the labor movement of this country and my commitment to all of you here today. But we'll find those solutions only one way, by working together. Now, I had big boots to fill when the Prime Minister asked me to follow Seamus O'Regan as Labor Minister. If there's anything I've learned from Seamus, it's what you all know so well as labor leaders, that relationships matter. Now, Steve Schuman and I have been friends for a couple of decades now, and I have great friends in your union. Lionel Railton was a great friend of mine. I know Patrick and I will get off to a great start here, and we have a great history of tripartism in this country, of unions, employers, and governments all sitting down together to tackle the big issues we face. Now, Stephen talked about it really briefly, but we all want to forget COVID. But I was working at the Public Works Department, and one of the big signature projects in this country, my colleagues in Parliament will know, is the renovation of Centre Block, the Parliament building. And the PSPC, that department that runs that job, said, we're going to have to shut that project down. Well, now Lionel and so many other construction union leaders across this country called me up and said, you know what, there's a lot of nervousness in our ranks. We didn't know where this was going, this pandemic. You got to find a way to keep that project, of all project, a showcase project, operating. Operate it safely, pay everyone what they've earned, modify the rules, do what you need to do, but keep that project going. So with the help of Lionel, I called up, because we like to respect the labor laws in the province where we do our projects, I called up the Ontario Minister of Labour, Monty McNaughton at the time. I said, Monty, we want to keep that job open. What do we have to do? Let's roll up our sleeves and get to work and get those people back on this job site as quickly as possible. And you know what? That's what we did. And thanks to Lionel Railton, thanks to the operating engineers, thanks to all the construction trades, we were able to get that done. And that was an important thing because we kept jobs and job sites going right across the country during COVID. So. But you can only get that kind of thing done if you can trust the men and women sitting down at that table with you, if you can respect them. And that's a pretty fundamental thing, respect. Respect is a two-way street. And to be perfectly honest with you, Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, well, I'm not too sure that he respects you. Sure, he stood in front of rooms like this before when telling people what they want to hear. He's quite happy to stand behind podiums like this. I was at the IBEW in St. John's a couple of weeks ago. He stood, indeed, behind a podium like this. Well, I stood in a chair like that and sat and took questions from the brothers and the sisters in the IBEW and related to them and heard what was on their mind. He was gone at a town long gone before I had begun doing that. The space between this podium and all of you, it might seem just like a few feet to you and me, but it might as well be a couple 100 miles for Pierre. Guys like Pierre, well, they're more interested in photo ops than they are with actually listening to you, with listening to what you have to say, with being open to ideas like the idea that Lionel Railton brought to me during the early days of COVID. Guys like Pierre, they want to do every photo op so they can distract from their track record. You all know who Pierre is, and you know who his Conservative buddies are. Pierre Poilievre was the champion of two of the most anti-union and anti-worker bills this country has ever seen, in Bills C-525 and C-377. Conservative bills that tried to limit your ability to organize and forced you to show your finances just when you went to the bargaining table so employers knew exactly what cards you were holding. So when we say relationships matter, what does that mean? When we say respect matters, what does that mean? It means ripping up bills like C-525 and 377 as soon as we got into office. On a déchiré ces projets de loi, C-525 et C-377, aussitôt qu'on a accédé au pouvoir. It means over $300 million, that's with an M, in funding since 2017 for union training centers from coast to coast to coast. It means good, well-paying union jobs on generational projects like the Trans Mountain Pipeline and the end-to-end EV supply chain we're building that's going to transform the economy of this country. That's 26,800 person years of employment on TMX post-construction and tens of thousands of direct and indirect jobs with companies like Honda, Ford, Northvolt, Umicore, and General Motors to build those cars of the future right here at home. Strong relationships like ours are how we're able to advance one of the most significant changes to Canadian labour law in decades this year, and I was proud to be the House Leader with Seamus O'Regan, where we banned replacement workers during strikes and lockouts. My friends, we are not doing our job unless we're looking after your job. Absolutely. Because replacement workers prolong disputes and tip the scales at the bargaining table, and they can poison workplaces for generations. Because relationships like ours haven't mattered to Pierre Poilievre in the past, they don't matter to him today, and they won't matter to him in the future. Pierre Poilievre doesn't want to stand with you, he just wants to stand in front of you. Mais vous ne pouvez pas dire la même chose du Premier ministre Justin Trudeau. Vous connaissez les relations que vous avez bâties avec lui. Les dirigeants syndicaux de tout le pays le savent. Des relations fondées sur la confiance, la responsabilité, le respect. C'est le genre de choses que vous avez non seulement appris à connaître, mais que vous attendez de notre gouvernement. C'est le genre de relations que j'espère construire avec vous dans les mois à venir en tant que ministre du Travail. You know Justin Trudeau. He has stood with you. We have done all of the things that I just mentioned. He's shown you the goods. He's been with you alongside all of these disputes. He's the guy that signed off on keeping that Parliament Hill job going way back when. And you know what else? He's a passionate optimist about the future of this country. The kind of future we can only build by putting our shoulders, when we're alongside you, to the wheel and working together. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to welcome my boss, the shop steward, the Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau.
Hello, operating engineers. How you guys doing today? Good. Well, I know it's been a few days of really good work, and I'm the thing that prevents you from getting home to see your families out across the country. So I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to be here to share some reflections with you all. Je veux d'abord évidemment remercier le ministre MacKinnon, Steve, pour cette belle introduction, et surtout merci d'avoir entrepris avec brio un énorme défi, pas juste pour ta job, mais pour le pays, dès ton arrivée en travail en tant que ministre du Travail. Un grand merci aussi à Brian Cochrane et Patrick Campbell pour l'invitation à prendre la parole ici aujourd'hui avec vous. And it's also great to be here with my fellow parliamentarians, my Manitoba colleagues, Ben Carr, Dan Vandal, Kevin Lamoureux, and Terry Duguid, part of a great team we have here in Manitoba, working with a progressive government in Manitoba to make things happen for people across this province and indeed set the path across the country. But before I begin, I do want to discuss our government's actions to resolve the rail dispute. Our government fundamentally believes, and you all know this, that the best deals are always found at the table. That's why former Minister Seamus O'Regan and Minister Steve MacKinnon pushed all the parties for months to negotiate, to reach a deal that keeps goods moving on our rails and addresses the serious safety concerns raised by Teamsters Canada. Unfortunately, CN and CPKC took the deeply unhelpful decision last Thursday to lock out employees after talks reached an impasse. That came with a cost of over $1 billion of shipments per day, while, as you all know, putting at risk thousands of jobs across the country, including union jobs. And it raised serious public safety concerns, with everything from propane for remote hospitals to chlorine for safe drinking water being transported on our rails. As a result, we reluctantly took the decision to request binding arbitration to resolve this dispute. To be clear, this is not the outcome we wanted to see. If it wasn't obvious to every Canadian already, Canadian rail workers do a vital job, and they deserve to work in safety and in dignity. And as Steve just said, we will be looking at every possible immediate and long-term solution to address the worker safety issues raised by the Teamsters Union and ultimately to make our rail system work better. And during our Q&A after, I'll be happy to discuss this and take any of your questions to address further questions you may have, because it's a big thing, an important thing, and you know, for all the years we've worked together, that having a strong, open relationship that engages, frankly, with unions is core to this government's success and to Canada's success. See, since we first formed a Liberal government back in 2015, we've always made one thing clear. Strengthening the middle class would always be our guiding principle, our North Star, the central objective to everything we would do. On a gardé le cap en se basant sur ce principe, et on a réalisé de grands projets et de grands progrès. Mais on n'aurait pas pu l'accomplir sans vous, le mouvement syndical canadien. As you all well know, a strong middle class doesn't happen by accident. The 8-hour workday, weekends off, safe and healthy workplaces, protections against arbitrary dismissal, good-paying, fulfilling, community-building work, None of these workplace protections and rights were given. None of them were automatic, and none of them were inevitable. They were hard-fought and won, and they were won by unions. But that's not all. Unions have also been at the forefront in shaping the programs and services that make Canada, Canada. From universal health care to old age security to parental benefits, unions have proven that they don't just build the roads, bridges, transit that Canadians need and rely on every single day. And yes, pipelines like TMX, which operating engineers like all of you built. Thank you, by the way, again and again. Unions have proven that they build the middle class. And you've stood by us every step of the way to build a middle class that's even stronger. Now, from even before when we formed government, you've pointed out there is lots of work to be done. So we responded. In fact, 9 years ago yesterday, during the 2015 campaign at your local 793 in Oakville, actually, Mike Gallagher, are you here? There you are. You remember that day, Mike? It was the end of August, 2015 campaign. I'd like you to not remember how I got that crane swinging like nobody's business. But we made an announcement. We made a promise of a historic doubling of federal infrastructure spending to build this country. That was the commitment we made to you and to Canadians, that we were going to get building again. After years of Harper underinvestment, years of Harper cuts and austerity. And you know better than most that we've delivered on that promise and a whole lot more. On a instauré l'allocation canadienne pour enfants afin de réduire la pauvreté de la moitié et de mettre plus d'argent dans les poches des familles. On a créé des services de garde à 10 $ par jour qui génèrent déjà des économies jusqu'à 14 000 $ par an pour des familles. On met sur pied un programme national d'alimentation scolaire qui va permettre de mieux nourrir vos enfants et de réduire vos factures d'épicerie. We're pushing ahead on national pharmacare, making insulin free for every Canadian who needs it, and providing free prescription contraceptives because we not only believe in a woman's right to choose, we act on it. As of last week, our Canadian dental care plan has already helped over 500,000 previously uninsured Canadians get the dental services and dental care they deserve. And we've been able to do all this because we've been responsible with taxpayer dollars, delivering the lowest deficit amongst advanced industrialized nations and the lowest net government debt in the G7. These are important victories for Canadians, for the middle class, for working people. And they were made possible by all of you. But union leaders, like all of you here today, also know that these programs can be cut, protections unraveled, and progress undone. Et vous savez qu'il y a toujours eu un parti pour pousser cette austérité, le Parti conservateur du Canada. I don't need to remind you of the Harper years. You know that those were dark days, and you know that we can't afford to go back. Unfortunately, that's what Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives are proposing. And Mr. Poilievre likes to pretend he has the backs of workers, but I know you're not buying it. You know his record, and you know what he stands for, and more precisely, what he has stood for and stood against in all his 20 years as an MP. Poilievre and his colleagues passed Bill 377, a law that piled on the red tape to stifle unions and bury them in bureaucracy. Pierre Poilievre a voté pour 525, une loi qui a truqué le jeu à l'avantage des entreprises en obligeant les syndicats à divulguer leurs finances privées. And, taking a page from the American far-right playbook, he's called for right-to-work laws, laws which may have a nice-sounding name, but you know what they actually do. Starve unions of the resources you need to deliver higher wages and better protections in the workplace. That's what Poilievre thinks of unions. That's what he thinks of you. Mais ça, c'est du passé. Il dit que maintenant, il est aux côtés des travailleurs. Il affirme d'être un homme transformé. Ben, OK, regardons les faits. Qu'il s'agisse de soins dentaires, de repas gratuits à l'école, de l'assurance médicaments ou des services de garde, il a voté contre chacun de ces programmes qu'on a mis en place pour aider les travailleurs à mieux s'en sortir. Et si jamais il prend le pouvoir, il va les éliminer. Pierre Poilievre used you for photo ops to pretend he's a friend to working people. But the truth is, he's a phony. He thinks you're all suckers. But above all, he's scared of you. Like every conservative before him, he's scared of what workers can accomplish when they organize. He's scared because when workers organize, they demand better. They push to make government work for working people. But most importantly, he's scared of you because he thrives on chaos, on despair, on division. And unions represent the opposite of that. You're organized, you're hopeful, and you're united in pursuit of one goal: to deliver real progress. Well, I'll tell you what, our Liberal government is not afraid of empowering workers. We're not scared by unions. As soon as we took office, we repealed the Conservative Bills 377 and 525. On a renversé l'augmentation conservatrice de l'âge de la retraite de 65 à 67 ans. On a instauré 10 jours de congé de maladie payés pour les travailleurs sous réglementation fédérale. Et quand on a renégocié l'ALENA, on a insisté sur l'adoption de nouvelles mesures visant la protection des travailleurs. We passed the Sustainable Jobs Act so that workers can have a seat at the table as we build a strong green economy right here in Canada, a law that Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives obstructed for months. And we passed historic anti-scab legislation which banned replacement workers because they tilt the playing field and they enable employers to walk away from the bargaining table where the best deals are made. See, this is what being pro-worker actually looks like. This is what it means to have unions' backs. Before I wrap up, I want to zoom out for a second and recognize that we are at a global inflection point, a moment of deep consequence. The world is changing rapidly. It's an increasingly challenging and uncertain place. And the global economy is undergoing the largest transformation since the Industrial Revolution. But because we believe that confident countries should invest in their workers, their communities, their future, because we're focused on skating where the puck is going, because we're implementing the most ambitious growth and industrial strategy in Canadian history, and most importantly, because we have the best workers in the world, we are poised to be a global economic powerhouse for decades to come. And guess what? That success will be union-made. Now, my friends, if we're being honest, I know you won't always agree with every decision our government makes. But I want to be clear. When we misstep, we'll listen. We want to learn. And we want to always do better. Because we have your backs. We believe you are essential to Canada's present and future. As I said at the beginning, strengthening the middle class is at the center of everything we do. And that's precisely why I wanted to be here today. Because when unions succeed, the middle class succeeds, and of course, all of Canada succeeds. So thank you, my friends, for everything you do. Thank you for everything you're going to keep doing as we build a better future for everyone together. Merci.